You weren't rejected because you were weak. You were rejected because you exposed strength in the wrong way. Most men suffer silently, not from heartbreak, but from never understanding the unspoken power games behind it. This video reveals the top female dirty weaknesses, subtle, emotional tactics, hidden fears, and primal vulnerabilities women never admit, but constantly act from. If you don't see them, you'll stay confused, chasing validation, failing tests, and bleeding your value as a man while thinking love is fairness. But Stoicism teaches emotional control is not indifference. It's power withheld. The man who sees through female psychology without reacting to it controls the dynamic without ever raising his voice. These aren't insults, they're x-rays of the battlefield. If you don't understand a woman's hidden war with herself, how will you ever win the one she's launching against you? Are you willing to look at what most men die avoiding? Point number 1. Her need for chaos hides her fear of stillness. Why does she hold you tighter right after she pulls away? Why does the warmth in her arms come only after the cold in her words? Most men never say it out loud, but they feel it. Every hug isn't comfort. It's a question, a test. Will you still hold her after she's emotionally vanished? Will you forget the silence, the distance, the sudden mood swings just because she returned with softness? You think it's affection, but beneath the surface, it's a reset, a way to blur your memory and disarm your masculine awareness. You were right to feel her withdrawal, but that hug, it asks if you'll doubt yourself again. That's how men lose frame. Not in the argument, but in the reconciliation. The chaos keeps you guessing, and the guessing keeps you chasing. Marcus Aurelius said, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it, and this you have the power to revoke." When you stop seeing her hug as love and start seeing it as a silence breaker, meant to erase your awareness, you begin to reclaim that power. It's not that she's evil, it's that she's emotional. She needs tension to feel desire. She needs contrast to feel alive. But when a man lacks emotional discipline, when he responds to every withdrawal with seeking and every return with surrender, he trades his clarity for confusion and calls it love. Epictetus once watched his own child die and said, "I knew they were mortal." That's the level of detachment ancient Stoics trained for. Not coldness, but the unbreakable readiness to accept what is. In modern love, the test isn't death, it's doubt. You feel it when she brings up old exes, when she emotionally checks out, when she hugs you softer than usual after a week of distance. That's not affection, that's a calibration. She wants to see, have you been waiting? Are you hungry for her again? Will you forget how you felt when she disappeared? This is where emotional discipline becomes your armor. When you feel the hug, feel the warmth, but don't let it rewrite the story. Hold your frame. Accept the gesture, but don't erase the data. Modern female psychology is built on emotional contrasts, and if you fall for everyone, your masculine control is gone. In that moment, your value as a man isn't in how you react, but in how you don't. Let her touch your skin, but don't let her move your center. So train for the silence beneath the hug. Let your mind slow. Ask nothing. Expect nothing. And most importantly, need nothing. Let her return, and let her presence mean less than your peace. That is Stoic detachment. That is power. When her warmth returns, can you still remain cold enough to remember? And if her chaos is predictable, why do you still flinch when it comes? But what happens when that chaos becomes your clarity, and you use it against her without saying a word? Now look deeper. What does her fear of stillness truly reveal about her? Point number 2. Emotional triggers are her unconscious control tactics. Why do you feel guilty for things you never did? Why do her tears make you question your truth? Even when you're right? Most men don't realize it until it's too late. She doesn't need to raise her voice to control you. All she has to do is feel, loudly, unpredictably, emotionally, and suddenly, you're apologizing for the tone you never used, defending a silence that never meant harm, explaining a boundary that needed no defense. This is the silent grip of emotional manipulation, not always intentional, often unconscious, but always effective if you're untrained. She triggers your empathy, your need to fix, your urge to keep peace. And just like that, your masculine frame crumbles under the weight of emotion that isn't even yours. Seneca once said, "No man is more unhappy than he who never faces adversity, for he is not permitted to prove himself." Her emotional storms aren't problems, they're pressure tests. Not of your compassion, but of your command. Can you face her emotional flood without drowning in it? Can you look at her tears and still see clearly? Stoicism isn't about suppressing feelings, it's about not being led by it. And in modern relationships, where female psychology is wired for survival through connection, emotional triggering becomes a strategy, not a calculated one, but a primal one. It's how she gauges your center, your composure, your power. She doesn't need an answer. She needs to feel your solidity. In the old Stoic world, a general didn't react to every report of the enemy's movement. He waited, measured, then moved with precision. You must do the same. When she accuses you of not caring, when she storms off, when she cries and says you're cold, she's watching. Not for weakness, but for leadership. And if you cave, defend, or beg, you fail the mission. This is where emotional discipline becomes more than theory. It becomes survival. You either anchor the relationship in clarity, or you lose it to chaos disguised as connection. Masculine control isn't dominant. It's direction. You must know when a storm is real and when it's a theater. Female rejection doesn't always mean I don't want you. Sometimes it means, can you handle me? And most men can't because they haven't trained. In the realm of relationship power dynamics, the man who can see the trigger without reacting owns the moment. He stays rooted, stoic, silent, present, and in doing so, he reverses the frame, turning her emotion from a weapon into a mirror. So the next time she cries, yells, or withdraws, don't rush to fix it. Fix nothing. Just watch. Let her emotion pass through you like wind through stone. That's not coldness, that's strength. Ask yourself this: if you can't stay calm in the storm, how will she ever trust your leadership? But what if staying still while she spins is exactly what awakens her respect? Because now we enter deeper territory, where loyalty isn't emotional, it's earned through pressure. Point number 3, her loyalty is conditional on your strength, not your love. If love was enough, she would have stayed. But she didn't. She left, even after everything you gave, everything you sacrificed, everything you tried to prove. And here's the truth most men can't swallow. Her loyalty was never to your love. It was to the strength you either showed or lost. Women aren't wired to stay where they don't feel safe, led, or emotionally inspired. So when your love became comfort, and your comfort became passivity, she left. Maybe not physically, but emotionally. And the silence you now feel isn't punishment. It's clarity. Epictetus said, "First say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do, not what you feel like doing." Love makes men emotional, but discipline makes them powerful, and women feel that difference like instinct. In the world of female psychology, loyalty is not some poetic vow. It's a reaction to strength, to presence, to purpose. She's not checking how much you feel. She's testing how much you hold. And the moment you crumble under emotional pressure, apologize for setting boundaries, or chase her approval instead of standing in your truth, you become invisible to the part of her that craves a man she can trust with her surrender. In ancient Rome, a Stoic man would endure the death of his children, the collapse of his fortune, even exile without flinching, not because he felt nothing, but because he refused to let emotion dictate his actions. That's what women feel when they say they want a real man. Not some cartoon alpha, but a man who holds his line when everything in her tests it. A man who leads even when she resists, who doesn't explain himself into emotional submission. That's strength. And that's the only thing her loyalty will attach to. When your masculine frame stays grounded even while she pulls away, she reevaluates you. When your emotional discipline stays intact, even when her chaos flares, she respects you. When your value as a man comes from your mission, not her mood, she returns. Not because you begged, but because she remembered. This man doesn't chase, he builds, he commands, he leads. So ask yourself, is your love making her feel safe, or softening your edge? Because if you love her more than you lead yourself, she will lose trust. Not out of cruelty, but out of feminine survival. And when you see that clearly, love becomes what it was always meant to be, a reflection of your strength, not a replacement for it. But what happens when your strength no longer depends on her staying? Now lean in, because what she fears more than heartbreak is irrelevance in the presence of your mission. Point number 4, she hates boredom more than betrayal. If you ever wondered how she could leave you after everything you gave, You're asking the wrong question. She didn't leave because you failed her. She left because you stopped fascinating her. A woman will endure betrayal if it thrills her, but she will abandon devotion if it numbs her. Men get punished for being consistent, predictable, safe, because, in the realm of feminine emotion, boredom is death. She doesn't want chaos, but she needs emotional movement. And if you become the man who gives her everything without making her feel anything, she will start searching, sometimes subtly, sometimes destructively. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "It is not death that a man should fear, but never beginning to live." Now apply that to modern relationships. Most men think being safe, soft, and sacrificial will earn loyalty, but they forget comfort is not her currency. She trades in experience, intention, and energy. So when your masculine edge fades, when your mission becomes her mood, when your silence turns into passivity, you become forgettable. That's when she tests you. That's when the coldness starts. Not because you failed to love her, but because she no longer feels your presence. In ancient Stoic warfare, the generals didn't just defend their borders. They pushed forward. Movement, tension, progress. That's the same energy that keeps her attracted. She must feel you stretching reality, confronting resistance, leading with depth, not noise. But if you flatten, if every day becomes predictable, emotionally available, and frictionless, she will create friction just to feel alive again. That's when betrayal starts to whisper. Not always physical, sometimes emotional. The flirty message, the late response, the way she starts comparing. Because in her emotional world, even betrayal carries a pulse. Boredom doesn't. This is where Stoic detachment becomes your fire. You must stop chasing harmony. Emotional control doesn't mean being calm. It means generating presence. Let her feel your depth, your distance, your direction. Pull away not to punish, but to remain untouchable. In relationship power dynamics, the man who refuses to become her emotional mirror becomes her emotional anchor. That's what she craves. Not a yes man. A man who moves through life, not around her. So next time she pulls away, looks distant, acts cold, ask yourself, did I stop being dangerous? Not violent, not reckless, but unpredictably alive. Still silent, but pulsing with purpose. Because if she ever says, you've changed, maybe what she means is, you stopped making me feel. And now the real test begins. Can you create mystery without chaos and danger without damage? Point number 5. Validation feeds her power. Starvation reveals her truth. Why does she glow when you chase and turn cold when you pull away? Why does your attention lift her but your silence exposes her? Because in the game behind the words, validation is currency and she is the banker. Every compliment, every text, every just checking on you is a deposit into her emotional power. And most men, they spend themselves into bankruptcy, not because they're weak, but because they mistake validation for connection. What she really wants isn't attention. It's the feeling of being valuable enough to earn it, without asking. And if you give it too freely, too quickly, too often, she'll start to feel what she fears most, that your value is beneath hers. Epictetus warned, wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants. That includes emotional wealth. And in the world of female psychology, what she respects most is the man who doesn't need her. The man whose attention is earned, not given. That's the man she bends for. Not because he starves her out of cruelty, but because his energy is sacred, selective, rare, and rare attention holds power. In ancient Stoic arenas, the warrior didn't waste his strikes. He moved when necessary, never to impress. You must do the same. When she starts seeking validation, through withdrawal, attitude, or subtle performance, hold. Do not reward emotional tests with emotional reassurance, because once you feed the manipulation, you legitimize it. You teach her that control comes through chaos, and you give her the throne of the relationship without even noticing. This is where emotional discipline becomes the difference between kings and pawns. Masculine control is the refusal to respond on command. When she gets moody, you stay calm. When she flirts with absence, you flirt with detachment. When she seeks emotional proof, you offer nothing but presence, not coldness, not cruelty, control. And in that stillness, in that silence, her truth emerges. Does she respect you without your praise? Does she stay without being fed? Does she chase the man who doesn't chase her? That's how you test her soul. By not moving when she expects movement, by not explaining when she invites drama, by not giving when she's only asking to measure her power. Starve the dynamic and watch who survives. So ask yourself this. If your validation is free, what does that make you worth? because the man who values his attention forces her to choose between performance and presence. And once you've made her feel the absence of control, she'll either rise in respect or retreat in exposure. Now lean in, because the next level isn't about how she reacts, it's about how she hides. What if her most innocent traits are actually her most calculated weapons? Point number 6. Her feminine innocence masks a strategic mind. She'll laugh like a child, cry like a victim, touch your arm softly while claiming she doesn't know what she's doing. But don't be fooled. Behind her innocence is a mind that knows exactly what it's doing to yours. Most men collapse not from war but from disbelief that there ever was one. They ignore the timing of her affection, the pattern of her silence, the weaponized softness in her eyes, because she looks harmless. But what's hidden behind her smile is centuries of psychological evolution, refined, precise, and emotionally surgical. She doesn't need logic to win, she has influence. And if you misread her innocence as purity instead of strategy, you'll hand her the reins while thinking you're leading. Seneca once said, "He who is too afraid of being duped has lost the power to live." But in modern relationships, naivete isn't strength, it's suicide. Your value as a man depends on seeing what isn't spoken, reading between the silences, feeling when her vulnerability is a genuine surrender or a move in the chess game of emotional control. In ancient Stoicism, men trained their minds to pierce illusions. The public's praise meant nothing. The enemy's flattery meant less. And the woman's tears? They meant exactly what they were designed to: distraction. Because when you stop looking at the emotion and start looking at the effect it has on you, you finally see the game. This is where Stoic detachment becomes your shield. You don't hate her for the tactic. You just don't submit to it. Because she's not testing your heart. She's measuring your control. Every moment of innocence is a read of your mind. Will you step in and rescue her? Will you give more to keep her smiling? Will you open up just because she opened her eyes wide and whispered, "I'm scared"? She isn't lying, but she isn't neutral. She's strategic. And in the realm of female psychology, strategy always hides beneath softness. Not out of evil, out of instinct. The feminine survives through influence. It manipulates not by force, but by evoking protection, submission, sympathy. And most men, raised without emotional discipline, fall right into the script. Masculine control isn't about becoming cynical. It's about becoming clear. Let her be soft. But don't become soft in response. Let her be emotional, but remain sovereign in your energy. Let her perform innocence, but you perform nothing, because stillness itself reveals the truth. So here's your challenge. Next time she plays small, don't lean in. Lean back. Watch. Let her reveal whether it's fear or manipulation disguised as needed. Because once you stop reacting, her real intentions appear. And now we step into the final reversal, where leaving isn't lost, it's the ultimate signal of power. What happens when she fears you could walk away and not look back? Point number 7. She respects the man who can leave, not the one who stays. She doesn't miss the man who stayed no matter what. She forgets him. She remembers the man who could leave, but didn't, and fears the man who would leave without warning, without pleading, without flinching. Most men think loyalty earns love, but in the world of female psychology, loyalty without leverage becomes invisibility. She may say she wants certainty, but she respects uncertainty when it's grounded in strength, not games. Because a man who can walk away isn't careless, he's complete. And women feel that completeness like a pulse. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "He who lives in harmony with himself lives in harmony with the universe." That's not romance. That's detachment. A man at peace with himself doesn't need anyone to complete him. And because of that, he's the only one she can't control. Not through sex, not through silence, not through subtle threats of abandonment. He already lives without needing her. That's what makes him magnetic and terrifying. In the ancient world, Stoic warriors trained for death daily, not to become morbid, but so they wouldn't cling. They rehearsed the loss, visualized it, prepared to let go of anything that softened their edge. In today's relationship power dynamics, that edge is emotional, and when you sharpen it, something primal shifts. She starts to feel like the one being pursued by your absence, not your approval. She becomes aware that your presence is a choice, not a guarantee, and that realization alone reshapes her behavior. This is where masculine control separates men from boys. The man who stays no matter how she disrespects, tests, or retreats loses her respect. Not because he's weak, but because he has nowhere else to go, and she feels that. But the man who walks away when respect dies quietly, cleanly, without rage or warning, etches himself into her nervous system because he didn't need to punish her. He just disappeared. Stoic detachment isn't about pretending not to care. It's about choosing not to be controlled. She doesn't need a man who never leaves. She needs a man who can, but only stays by choice. That's the paradox of power. The less you cling, the more they attach. The less you prove, the more they chase. So here's your final test. Can you look at her, at her beauty, her body, her chaos, and say, I don't need this? Because if you can, she'll feel something deeper than attraction. She'll feel fear, the good kind, the kind that turns attention into respect. And now ask yourself, if she vanished tomorrow, would you break or build? Because in the end, the man who can leave without emotion is the only one who ever truly stays in control. So now you see it. Her chaos isn't random, it's a test. Her tears aren't pure, they're calculated. Her love isn't unconditional. It's based on your ability to stay rooted while everything around you pulls for reaction. Every emotional wave she sends is designed to find one answer. Are you a man, or are you moved? You thought love was enough, but love without discipline is slavery. You thought loyalty guaranteed respect, but staying too long in the wrong place erases your value. You gave everything, except the one thing she actually wanted. A man who doesn't flinch. A man who watches the storm and stays still. A man who could leave and mean it. That's what makes her submit. Not to force, but to presence. This is the code most men never crack, because it requires war with yourself. To detach without becoming cold. To love without losing frame. To observe her moves without needing to move in return. That's Stoicism in the battlefield of modern relationships. That's masculine control under psychological warfare. And that's what makes you unforgettable. Not to her ego, but to her soul. Now ask yourself, will you keep playing her game? Or will you master your own? Because once you hold your power, the truth isn't hidden anymore. It's hers to face. If this message hits deeper than the noise out there, subscribe to Stoic Truth. We're not here for easy advice. We're here to weaponize your awareness, to turn your pain into precision, to make sure the next time you're tested, you pass without saying a word. Subscribe now. Train your mind. Reclaim your frame. This is your war. Stoic Truth is your armor.